Stay down. Don't move. Don't make a sound, Sophia whispered, pulling the little girl into her arms as bullets tore through the restaurant. Are you going to save me? Isabella asked, shaking. Sophia looked at the door, where the men who worked for her own employer were now firing into the room, hunting the very man she had been paid to kill. Yes, Sophia said quietly. I am. Later that night, Alessandro De Luca would learn the truth about the waitress who saved his daughter's life. And the next morning, when her phone rang, Sophia would find out that he already knew everything. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button, tap like, and comment below where you're watching from and what time it is right now in your city. Now, let's go back to the beginning, to a quiet restaurant on a Friday night, before anyone knew how much blood was about to be spilled. Table 4 is ready for their special guest, the restaurant manager said, straightening his tie for the third time in 2 minutes. Sophia nodded, smoothing down her black apron. To anyone watching, she looked like any other waitress, calm, polite, a little tired from a long shift. Nobody in that restaurant knew her real name wasn't even Sophia. Nobody knew that under her apron, strapped against her ribs, was a small blade sharp enough to end a man's life in under 4 seconds. She had been hired 3 days earlier by a man named Daniel Cross, a rival crime boss who wanted one thing and one thing only. Alessandro De Luca dies tonight, Daniel had told her over the phone. Clean. Quiet. No mess. I don't do messy work, Sophia had answered. That's why you hired me. Sophia Moretti was one of the most feared names in the underworld, even though almost nobody had ever seen her face and lived to describe it. She didn't use guns unless she had to. She didn't leave witnesses unless she had to. She got close, she waited, and she finished the job before anyone even realized danger was in the room. Tonight, her target was Alessandro De Luca, a man who controlled almost every piece of organized business on the east side of the city. The shipping routes, the private clubs, the money that moved quietly between men in expensive suits. At 7:45 p.m., the front door of the restaurant opened, and Alessandro walked in. He was tall, dressed in dark gray, with a kind of quiet confidence that made every head in the room turn without him even trying. 2 bodyguards followed close behind him, and beside him, holding his hand, was a small girl in a yellow dress. Sophia's whole plan nearly stopped in her chest. Table for 3, Alessandro said to the host, smiling down at the girl. My daughter insisted on the pasta here. It's the best in the city, Daddy, the girl said proudly. Isabella, Alessandro laughed. You say that about every restaurant. Sophia stood frozen near the kitchen door, watching the two of them settle into their booth. She had studied Alessandro De Luca for 3 days. She knew his morning schedule, his favorite drink, the scar above his left eyebrow from a car accident years ago. Nobody had told her he would bring his daughter to dinner. Nobody had told her that killing him meant doing it in front of an 8-year-old girl. Sophia, table 4 now, the manager hissed, snapping her out of her thoughts. She walked over with a notepad she didn't need and a smile that felt heavier than usual. Good evening. Can I start you off with something to drink? Water for the table, Alessandro said. And whatever's freshest for the pasta. I want lemonade, Isabella said, grinning up at Sophia. With extra ice, please. Extra ice, coming right up, Sophia said, and something about the girl's bright, trusting smile made her stomach twist. She walked away, heart pounding harder than it had in years. Finish the job, she told herself. Asterisk, he's a criminal. He's ruined lives. He's exactly like the men who ruined yours. Asterisk. But every time she looked toward the booth and saw Isabella laughing at something her father said, her hand wouldn't move toward the blade at her ribs. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. A text from an unknown number. Daniel Cross checking in, exactly as she expected. Is it done? Sophia typed back carefully. Asterisk, not yet. Give me time. His guards are close. Asterisk. Asterisk, you have 1 hour. No more. Asterisk. Sophia slipped the phone back into her pocket and returned to the table with the drinks, forcing her hands steady. You seem nervous, Alessandro said suddenly, studying her face as she set down the lemonade. Sophia's heart skipped. Long shift, she said simply. Busy night. I understand that, Alessandro said, and something in his voice was almost kind. This is one of the only nights I get with her this week. Business doesn't leave much room for anything else. She's lucky to have you make the time, Sophia said, and to her own surprise, she meant it. She walked away again, her mind spinning. An hour. She had 1 hour to kill a man in front of his daughter, or Daniel Cross would assume she had failed. She had never failed a job in her life. But for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to succeed at this one. 40 minutes passed. Sophia delayed, refilled water glasses, brought extra bread, anything to buy time while she searched for a way to get Alessandro alone, away from his daughter's eyes. It never came. At 8:35 p.m., her phone buzzed again. Time's up. Sending backup. Sophia's blood ran cold. She had never once needed backup. Daniel Cross wasn't sending help. He was sending a message, that he no longer trusted her to finish it alone, and that he was done waiting. No, she whispered. No, no, no. She looked up just as the front door of the restaurant burst open. 3 men stormed in, guns already raised, moving straight toward table 4. Get down! Sophia screamed, and for the first time that night, her instincts didn't care about the mission at all. She sprinted across the room, sliding into the booth and grabbing Isabella just as the first shots shattered glass and would all around them. Stay down. Don't move. Don't make a sound, Sophia whispered, pulling the little girl beneath the table and wrapping her body around her like a shield. Are you going to save me? Isabella asked, shaking, tears streaking down her small face. Sophia looked toward the chaos, where Alessandro's bodyguards were exchanging fire with the attackers, where Alessandro himself had drawn a gun from beneath his jacket and was firing back with practiced precision. Yes, Sophia said quietly. I am. A bullet splintered the table above their heads. Sophia pulled Isabella tighter, using her own back to cover the girl completely, refusing to move even as would chips and glass rain down around them. One of the attackers spotted the booth and started moving toward it, gun raised. Sophia didn't think. She reached for the blade at her ribs, the same blade meant for Alessandro's throat, and threw it in one smooth, practiced motion. It struck the attacker in the shoulder, and Alessandro's bodyguard finished the job a second later. The last attacker turned and ran, disappearing into the night as sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. Silence fell over the wrecked restaurant. Alessandro rushed toward the booth, his gun still smoking in his hand, and found his daughter alive, shaking but unharmed, wrapped protectively in a stranger's arms. Isabella. He pulled her out and held her close, his hands trembling as he checked every inch of her for injury. The waitress saved me, Daddy, Isabella cried into his shoulder. She wasn't scared at all. Alessandro looked up at Sophia, who was sitting on the floor amid broken glass, blood on her sleeve, breathing hard. Who are you? He asked. Sophia looked at him for a long moment, her mind racing through a dozen different lies. In the end, she gave him a version of the truth. Just a waitress, she said quietly, who wasn't going to let a little girl die tonight. Alessandro studied her carefully, something sharp and thoughtful behind his eyes. Most people run from gunfire. You ran toward my daughter. She's a child, Sophia said. That's the only thing that mattered. The police arrived minutes later. Sophia gave a short, careful statement, keeping her hands from shaking as she spoke. Before Alessandro left with Isabella held tightly against his chest, he turned back one final time. I don't forget people who protect what's mine, he said. You'll be hearing from me. He had no idea, in that moment, exactly how true those words would become. That night, Sophia sat alone in her small apartment, staring at the blade she had thrown, now cleaned and sitting on her kitchen table. She had failed the mission. Worse, she had actively fought against the men sent to finish it. Daniel Cross would know by morning that she had betrayed him. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello. You should have let him die, Daniel Cross said, his voice cold as ice. Instead, you made yourself my enemy. He had his daughter with him, Sophia said flatly. I don't kill in front of children. You know my rules. Rules don't pay your bills, Sophia. Watch your back. The line went dead. Sophia sat in the dark for a long time after that, holding the blade in her hand, wondering how a job she had done 100 times before had suddenly become the one thing she couldn't finish. What Sophia didn't know was that Alessandro De Luca never let anything go unanswered. By midnight, he had already put his best men on finding out exactly who the mysterious waitress really was. By 2 a.m., a folder sat open on his desk: photographs, old case files, whispered names from informants who owed him favors. Sophia Moretti, age 29. No family. No fixed address. Responsible, according to 3 separate underworld sources, for at least 11 confirmed jobs across the past 6 years. And, according to a very nervous informant who had once worked for Daniel Cross, hired 3 days ago for one specific purpose: to kill Alessandro De Luca. Alessandro sat back in his chair, staring at her photograph for a long time. "She had a blade meant for my throat," he said quietly to Frank Doyle, his most trusted lieutenant standing beside the desk, "and instead, she used it to save my daughter." "You should eliminate her before she finishes the job," Frank said. "No," Alessandro said slowly, a plan already forming behind his eyes. "I think I'm going to offer her one instead." The next morning, at 9:15 a.m., Sophia's phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at it, certain this was the call that would decide whether she lived or died. Maybe Daniel Cross had sent someone. Maybe Alessandro had discovered the truth and was calling to finish what his men had failed to do the night before. She answered anyway. "Hello. Miss Moretti," Alessandro's voice said calmly. "I believe it's time we spoke honestly." Sophia's whole body went still. "I don't know who that is." "I know exactly who you are," Alessandro said, and there wasn't any anger in his voice, only quiet certainty. "I know who hired you. I know why you were in that restaurant last night. And I know that when it mattered most, you chose to save my daughter instead of finishing your job." Sophia closed her eyes, already calculating her escape routes, her safe houses, how fast she could disappear from the city. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked bluntly. "No," Alessandro said. "I'm going to invite you to my estate. I have a proposal for you, and I think you're going to want to hear it." 2 hours later, Sophia stood at the gates of the Bennett, no, the De Luca estate, expecting an ambush at every turn. Frank Doyle met her at the door, his expression unreadable. "He's waiting for you in his study," Frank said. "Weapons stay at the door." Sophia handed over the 2 blades hidden in her jacket without argument. She had nothing left to lose by walking in unarmed. Alessandro stood by the window when she entered, his back to her. "You could have killed me last night," he said without turning around. "Even after your employer sent his men, you had chances. A gun on the floor. A guard distracted. You chose to protect Isabella instead." "I told you," Sophia said. "I don't kill in front of children. You know my rules. Rules don't pay your bills, Sophia. Watch your back." The line went dead. Sophia sat in the dark for a long time after that, holding the blade in her hand, wondering how a job she had done 100 times before had suddenly become the one thing she couldn't finish. What Sophia didn't know was that Alessandro De Luca never let anything go unanswered. By midnight, he had already put his best men on finding out exactly who the mysterious waitress really was. By 2 a.m., a folder sat open on his desk: photographs, old case files, whispered names from informants who owed him favors. Sophia Moretti, age 29. No family. No fixed address. Responsible, according to 3 separate underworld sources, for at least 11 confirmed jobs across the past 6 years. And, according to a very nervous informant who had once worked for Daniel Cross, hired 3 days ago for one specific purpose: to kill Alessandro De Luca. Alessandro sat back in his chair, staring at her photograph for a long time. "She had a blade meant for my throat," he said quietly to Frank Doyle, his most trusted lieutenant standing beside the desk, "and instead, she used it to save my daughter." "You should eliminate her before she finishes the job," Frank said. "No," Alessandro said slowly, a plan already forming behind his eyes. I think I'm going to offer her one instead. The next morning, at 9:15 a.m., Sophia's phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at it, certain this was the call that would decide whether she lived or died. Maybe Daniel Cross had sent someone. Maybe Alessandro had discovered the truth and was calling to finish what his men had failed to do the night before. She answered anyway. Hello. Miss Moretti, Alessandro's voice said calmly. I believe it's time we spoke honestly. Sophia's whole body went still. I don't know who that is. I know exactly who you are, Alessandro said, and there wasn't any anger in his voice, only quiet certainty. I know who hired you. I know why you were in that restaurant last night. And I know that when it mattered most, you chose to save my daughter instead of finishing your job. Sophia closed her eyes, already calculating her escape routes, her safe houses, how fast she could disappear from the city. Are you going to kill me? She asked bluntly. No, Alessandro said. I'm going to invite you to my estate. I have a proposal for you, and I think you're going to want to hear it. 2 hours later, Sophia stood at the gates of the Bennett. No, the De Luca estate, expecting an ambush at every turn. Frank Doyle met her at the door, his expression unreadable. He's waiting for you in his study, Frank said. Weapons stay at the door. Sophia handed over the 2 blades hidden in her jacket without argument. She had nothing left to lose by walking in unarmed. Alessandro stood by the window when she entered, his back to her. You could have killed me last night, he said without turning around. Even after your employer sent his men, you had chances. A gun on the floor. A guard distracted. You chose to protect Isabella instead. I told you, Sophia said. I don't kill in front of children. That's not the whole truth, is it? Alessandro finally turned to face her. You could have waited. Finished the job quietly before we ever sat down at that table. You didn't. Something stopped you long before the shooting started. Sophia said nothing. I have a proposal, Alessandro continued. Daniel Cross believes you failed. He'll assume I'll retaliate, and he'll be watching for it. So we're going to give him exactly what he expects, my death. Sophia raised an eyebrow. You want to fake your own death. I want to disappear long enough to find out who's really behind this, Alessandro said. Cross didn't come up with this plan on his own. He's not smart enough. Someone close to me fed him information. My schedule, my movements, things only a handful of people know. I need someone with your skills to help me find out who. And in return? Sophia asked. You walk away clean. No more looking over your shoulder. No more men like Cross treating your life like it belongs to them. Sophia studied him carefully. Why trust me? I was sent to kill you. Because, Alessandro said quietly, my daughter is alive because of you. That buys more trust than you realize. The plan unfolded over the following weeks. A staged car explosion. A closed casket funeral. Whispered rumors that spread through the underworld exactly as intended. Daniel Cross celebrated too early. Working in the shadows, Alessandro and Sophia tracked the money, the phone calls, the meetings that led back to Cross's headquarters. Isabella, kept safe at a private location with Frank's family, had no idea her father was even alive during those tense weeks, though Sophia visited quietly when she could, unable to stay away from the little girl who had wrapped her small hands so tightly around her heart that night. You're good with her, Alessandro said one evening, watching Sophia help Isabella with a puzzle over a video call. She reminds me what I'm actually fighting for, Sophia admitted. I forgot for a long time that there was anything worth protecting. Alessandro looked at her for a long moment. What happened to you before all this? Sophia hesitated, then, for the first time in years, told someone the truth. A family destroyed by men exactly like Daniel Cross. A childhood spent learning to survive instead of learning to live. A path into violence that had felt, at the time, like the only door left open to her. I understand that better than you might think, Alessandro said quietly. This life takes more than it ever gives back. 3 weeks later, they finally cornered Daniel Cross in an abandoned warehouse near the docks, the same docks Alessandro's businesses controlled. Sophia moved through the shadows exactly as she had been trained, silent and precise, while Alessandro's men secured the exits. "You're supposed to be dead," Cross said, stunned, when Alessandro stepped into the light. "Disappointing, isn't it?" Alessandro said calmly. Cross's eyes darted to Sophia. "She was supposed to finish you. I don't understand." "You hired the wrong assassin," Sophia said, stepping forward. "Turns out I have standards." Cross reached for a hidden weapon, but Sophia was faster, disarming him in one clean motion before he could even raise it. "Who fed you the information?" Alessandro demanded. "My schedule. My security. Someone inside my organization gave you all of it." Cross laughed bitterly. "You think I'm the mastermind here? I'm just a piece on his board." "Whose board?" Sophia pressed, her blade against his throat. Cross's eyes flicked, just for a second, toward the warehouse entrance. "Ask your best friend," Cross said, smiling through the fear. "Ask Robert Hale." Alessandro's face went pale. Robert Hale had been his advisor for 15 years, a man who had stood beside him since the very beginning, a man he trusted more than almost anyone alive. "That's not possible," Alessandro said quietly. "Believe what you want," Cross said. "But he's the one who wanted you gone. Said your daughter made you weak. Said the business needed someone who wouldn't hesitate." Sophia watched Alessandro's expression shift from disbelief to cold, controlled fury. "Take him into custody," Alessandro told his men. "Alive. I want him talking to the police, not the fish." As they dragged Cross away, Alessandro turned to Sophia, his jaw tight. "I need to confront Robert. Tonight." "Then I'm coming with you," Sophia said. "You're not walking into that alone." They found Robert Hale in his office late that night, calm, composed, utterly unaware that his plan had unraveled. "Alessandro," Robert said, standing quickly, feigning shock. "You're alive. Thank God." "Save it," Alessandro said, his voice like ice. Daniel Cross talked. Robert's composure cracked for just a second before he reached for the gun in his desk drawer. Sophia was already moving, crossing the room in 3 fast steps and slamming his arm against the desk before he could raise the weapon. 15 years, Alessandro said, standing over his former friend. 15 years, and you wanted my daughter to grow up without a father. You were becoming soft, Robert spat, still struggling against Sophia's grip. The business needed someone who wouldn't hesitate to protect it. The business, Alessandro said quietly, was never worth more than my daughter's life. That's something you never understood. Frank and the other men arrived moments later, taking Robert into custody. As they led him away, Alessandro stood in the wreckage of a 15-year friendship, breathing slowly, steadying himself. "It's over," Sophia said gently, stepping beside him. "It's over," Alessandro repeated, though his voice sounded far from certain. With Robert Hale exposed and Daniel Cross's operation collapsed entirely, Alessandro's empire was safer than it had been in years. Isabella returned home, laughing again, running through the halls of the estate without a single shadow of fear behind her eyes. Sophia stayed for another 2 weeks, helping tie up loose ends, before she finally packed the small bag she had carried into this entire situation and prepared to walk away from the underworld for good. "You're really leaving," Alessandro said, finding her by the front gate one morning. "That was always the deal," Sophia said. "Clean slate. No more looking over my shoulder." "It was," Alessandro agreed. He paused, studying her face carefully, the way he had that very first night in the restaurant. "Isabella is going to miss you." "I'll miss her too," Sophia admitted, and meant it more than she expected to. Alessandro stepped closer, and for the first time since she had met him, he wasn't standing like a boss addressing an employee, or a man negotiating a business deal. He was simply standing there, quiet and open, in a way she had never seen from him before. "I'm not asking you to stay because I need protection," he said carefully. "I'm asking because these past few weeks, working beside you, watching you with my daughter. I stopped thinking of you as the woman who was hired to kill me." Sophia's breath caught. "Alessandro, I know what I'm asking," he said. "I know it's complicated. I know where you came from and what that means. I'm not as a mafia boss this time." He reached out and gently took her hand. "I'm asking as a man who doesn't want you to walk out that gate." Sophia looked down at their hands, then back up at his face, searching for any trace of doubt and finding none. "Isabella wants pasta again tonight," she said softly. "The place downtown. She won't stop talking about it." Alessandro smiled, relief washing over his features. "Is that a yes?" "Have dinner with me tonight," Sophia said, a small, quiet smile finally reaching her own lips. "I already know exactly what you like." If this story kept you hooked until the very end, smash that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment below what you've learned from this story. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. See you in the next video.